SBU is the Spina Bifida Association's new viral education program. Our goal is to bring the world's best care providers and resources directly into your home. SBU is the only free webinar series dedicated solely to the educational, employment, social, self-advocacy, and health needs of people with spina bifida. We hope that you will enjoy today's presentation, Building Independence, How to Develop Better Initiation and Attention, and hope that you take time to complete the evaluation at the close of the presentation.
Good afternoon. My name is Margaret Calvary. I'm a child clinical psychologist, and I'm here today from the University of Louisville. I'm in the Department of Pediatrics there at the Weisskopf Child Evaluation Center, and it's a pleasure to be here at the conference again. The presentations, I think, seem to be more interesting and a bit more helpful for people if we kind of take questions as we go along, or if people have thoughts, or if we run into an area that's particularly interesting. As you can see from the handout, I did not create a particularly long presentation today with the hopes that we'll kind of stumble into some things as we move through it that are of interest to you guys. So please feel free, if you have a question, to raise your hand. And I have two very able-bodied pre-Olympian assistants who are going to run the microphone to you. I'm supposed to, there they go, they're warming up in the back. I'm supposed to repeat the question after you've said it, so it's not some odd habit I have. I'll repeat the question and then we'll move forward from there. Well, as I said, it's a pleasure to be at the conference. This is about my fourth or fifth presentation, and every year I come, I meet all sorts of interesting people and get all sorts of interesting, challenging questions that I don't get in my office, so I'm expecting some good things today from you guys. The title of my presentation is, I'll just give you some background. I've been seeing, in the Department of Pediatrics, I do evaluations as part of a diagnostic team. And as part of my team, I have other psychologists, I have physical therapists, occupational therapists, speech and language pathologists, developmental pediatricians, geneticists, neurologists, urologists, oncologists. So almost any of the ologists I need to get my hands on, I can get my hands on. And the longer I do this sort of work with, and I am in pediatrics, so my work is primarily between 0 and 25-year-olds, although obviously 0 to 25-year-olds have parents who are taking care of them, so I do as much work with parents as I do with children. But the longer I do this sort of work, the more I seem to be focusing in on taking care of the very basics of things in order for big things to happen. Because a lot of times people come into me and they say, we've stumbled into problems with dating. Well, dating is a big topic. Or we've stumbled into problems with being independent with our bowel and bladder programs. Or we've stumbled into problems in school. All those are really big topic areas. And so when it comes to breaking that down into where things are really falling apart, these two skills I'm going to talk to you about today are 8 out of 10 times where the ship lands. And I think that's likely the case because you guys have been through 2 lively days of discussions. As you probably know at this point, the 2 executive functions I'm talking about today are attention and initiation. Have most of you guys been to other presentations about executive functions, or does that feel like a familiar topic? Executive functions? Yeah. So I didn't prepare a lot of slides about that, but basically what we now understand clearly about the brain is that there's certain areas of the brain that aren't, they're not responsible for your geometry ability as much as they are responsible for the bigger things that need to happen to get all those other things to happen. And we talk about those being primarily located in the frontal lobe, consisting of executive functions, and it's a wide and broad list of things like problem solving and organization, even the ability to control and regulate our moods and emotions and to come up with multiple options in the heat of the moment. But many authors have talked about how you have to have there's different levels of executive functions, meaning kind of basic foundational executive functions and then higher order ones. And attention and initiation are widely thought of as 2 of the foundational ones. Now, attention, I could spend 6 hours talking about attention because attention issues or attention deficits are one of the things that commonly come up at this conference. And so I'll talk broadly and specifically about attention today. So any thoughts or questions about any of that? Okay, so initiation, I always start with a definition. So initiation is the ability to independently start an action or activity. And attention is the ability to sustain focus on the information necessary for learning or completing a task. And many children with reduced attention seem to ignore or not hear the directions, and thus to appear to many to have an attention problem. Now, these are definitions that one of my teams and I created for a book that we wrote. They are not, they're not the end-all, be-all definitions of initiation and attention, but these definitions were created out of initial parent interviews. And an initial parent interview is when a parent brings their child in, we ask them to, as specifically as possible, rate their top 10 complaints or top 10 annoying things that your child is doing that you would like us to help you figure out what's going on. And so you'll see as we go through this, you'll kind of hear some of those parent voices in their nicest way saying, he's driving me crazy because he does the homework and it sits there on the table and it never gets put in the backpack. So, okay, so for individuals who have a problem with initiation, it isn't this moment where you wake up and you say, oh gosh, look at it, it's sunny outside and I'm really going to keep that eye on my initiation problem this morning. If you have a problem with initiation, it is unknown to you. It is not something you're well aware of, but how it appears to others often leads us to understand that that's what the difficulty is. And understanding your experience of getting going in the world, changing to new environments, gives us a lot of information about whether initiation is at play, is an affected executive function. There is no, people talk a lot about neuropsychological batteries and neuropsychological testing. There is no pure test, neuropsychological test of initiation, because initiation is the act of getting moving, getting the momentum going to engage with a task or with a conversation or, with the alarm clock, if that's where it's starting. So these are the behavior symptoms. So these are the things you would observe in yourself, or you would observe in others, or you would observe in your grandchildren or your grandparents. Tremendous discomfort and difficulty adjusting to new situations or changes in the routine. Now, this is true for a lot of people, but this is a true kind of visible discomfort, a lot of rigidity, a lot of resistance, a lot of cluelessness about the changes. You'll see, if you go to, one of my favorite things to do with the interns is to have them visit preschool programs, because when you work within a certain population, we have a lot of kids who come through with autism, and you get so used to seeing how autistic children function, you lose your sense of the greater population. And so we send them out to the preschools to get a range of, okay, these kids are all 4 years old. Let's look at the range of what they're doing. And that's what you're thinking of when you're trying to figure out if what's going on with you or what's going on with the person that you love is a difficulty or not. You're looking at how atypical or typical is the behavior that I'm concerned about. So when I say tremendous discomfort, I mean, it's a thing that comes up again and again. It's not a one-time incident. It's something that's pervasive across environments, meaning that it would occur at grandma's house, it would occur at your house, it would occur on vacation, it occurs across multiple settings. Avoidance of typical peer activities, and it's not that they don't enjoy it once they're there, but it's this lacking of jumping in or taking the momentum or leading the game. You'll see this often with kids who are playing a game that is not well articulated. You see this really well with preschool age boys. They'll come up with the most incredible simple games on the playground, like toss the stick at the tree. And one of them will start tossing a stick at the tree, and he'll smack his buddy on the arm, and his buddy will start tossing sticks at the tree. And you'll notice that kids who are struggling with initiation, they'll watch, they'll stand there, they might even smile, but they don't take that next step and pick up a stick and throw it at the tree. And when you interview them, when you interview kids who struggle with initiation, you can ask them, do you want to play the game? Do you want to play the game where they're throwing the stick at the tree? And they'll say, yes. And you can, and we've said this, we've said, go ahead, you can play. And they say, okay. But that's not the same thing as the actual act of getting going with something. And that's a very simple example, but it's a good example because things that simple are difficult. And often with kids that young, it's an actual physical prompt. Help them pick up the stick, help them take a couple tosses, and it starts into that next cycle of being involved in something. Does that make sense to everyone? Yes. Oh, wait, we got to wait for the runner.
Well, I just wanted to say, my son is 3.5, and I mean, you just described it like perfectly. I mean, like you were talking about him in person. You know, that's all. So I'm interested to see what you're going to say to help me with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a 9-year-old, and I can say the same thing. It's like, okay, so what do we do about it?
Exactly.
Well, you know, the 3.5-year-old and the 9-year-old have a bit of a different suggestion, but is your son in preschool? Yeah. Okay. And the preschool teacher, that would be the first step, really, is to talk to the preschool teachers about whatever you think is not quite as ripe as you'd like it to be for him. And I don't know, you know, I don't know anything about him, but be it initiation or attention, which are really common in that set. And talking with them, my major message to people who are doing intervention is there is a difference in the brain between understanding and saying you know what you're going to do and physically becoming involved in doing what you're going to do. And we rely on verbal language all of the time that's our primary method of communication, even though 95% of communication comes non-verbally. So we ask kids all the time, do you want to play? They say yes. We say, go ahead and play, and they don't move forward. So at that step, you move them into the play by playing with them. And I don't care whether it's playing the stick game, or it's playing a game that their siblings are playing, or it's starting a conversation. You take them by the hand, you grab a stick, you say, grab the stick. If they can't grab the stick, you hand over hand, help them grab the stick. You chuck that stick together right at that tree. It's the act of physically practicing something that they haven't been able to start themselves. And I know that sounds really simple, but if you think about how many times as adults we kind of fail to do that, we rely on just telling them to do that, it's a big intervention if you break it down. It happens in the kitchen a lot too. Like kids will say, I'm hungry. I don't know if you see this at your house. And you'll say, well, that's fine, sweetheart, I left animal crackers on the table. And they won't go get the animal crackers. You know, there's just this small gap in there that needs to be bridged by physically starting them in the action of putting their hands into those animal crackers. It's as simple as that.
I think it's very easy to confuse what you're describing with being timid or shy.
It is.
And so,
how are you supposed to know?
Yeah. And so with my son, I think a lot of the times he's been labeled as just shy or timid, and so you just kind of let him observe. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to hear you say, you know, initiate it.
Yeah.
Them. Sorry, I'm hogging my...
Okay, actually, on this too, you described me to a T. Right. So for adults then, I mean, that's been a huge, like 4 out of 6 of those I was able to circle. So for adults, how would that look?
Well, for adults, it's obviously, and I think in some ways for adults, it's a more difficult thing because you don't have the benefit of, having a mom and dad there to be part of your constant support team. But I think one, awareness, of course, you have to be aware that's a problem, and then you have to set up, and I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but you have to create a situation that forces you through the action. And that can be, it happens a lot with adults socially, so I'll just use that as an example. So it's Friday night, and, at the office, everyone's like, well, we're going to stop at Molly's and grab a beer. Do you want to go? Yeah. So everyone's kind of leaving the office and doing their own thing, and you end up just going home like you do every other night. It's an issue of pairing with someone and saying, you know what, I need a buddy for this. I don't want to go alone. Can you help me pick out the right pair of shoes? But again, that does require some initiation on your part. The other way to do it is, for some people, planners work really well. Like, I don't know, do you have a planner system that you've got that works for you?
My thing is that I'll put it in there.
And then you won't refer to it?
To go, and I can fill out my day. But yeah, I don't go.
I think at that point, there has to be, I kind of think about it like I do with things with my husband. There's things that I'm very good at that he's horrible at. And there's things that he's really, really good at that I can't even get close to. And sometimes we have to have these discussions about, I want to do this, but I'm not making it happen. And I don't know if you're at the point where you feel like you've got close enough friends that you can have that discussion with. Because, it's one of those things where I think getting out of an initiation rut by yourself is an extremely difficult thing because it actually requires the thing that you're not good at. Mm-hmm. So I'm a real big fan of, if you decide in your head that you're going to go out for drinks at 6 o'clock on Friday night, then you're going to figure out how to make that happen. And I don't care if that's your mom calling from North Dakota saying, where are you right now? And you say, I'm sitting on the bus. And she says, well, it's 5:30. And you say, yep. And she says, get off the bus. Really, like someone who can, because you've got to be moved to the next step. So it's going to involve involving someone else, I think, because obviously you've tried it a couple different ways. Yeah. And that could also be, a lot of psychologists do that type of coaching.
Yeah, and I have one that does that, and my friends still kind of label it as, I'll get labeled as lazy, and because I don't.
You don't initiate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to be honest, the older you get with an initiation problem, the more it also becomes a habit. So, with this gentleman with the 3.5-year-old, I'm sure people have said that it's a little boy, that he is a kind of a more shy and quiet kiddo. Okay, that may or may not be the case. I have no idea what his temperament is. But if someone labels you shy and you don't initiate, and that goes on for year after year, guess what? You get in the habit of being shy. So it's kind of a double-edged sword when you become an adult because you've practiced not initiating for quite a long time. So we need just as much practice in initiating. But that can only happen with a team, I believe. I've only seen it be successful with a team.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. We've got a couple.
Hi. With my daughter, she's 15 years old, and I feel like I'm forcing her into a lot of things she doesn't want to do. She ends up enjoying it. Mm-hmm. Like with, we had the hand pedal bike riding.
Yeah.
That she refused to do. I hate it. And I said, well, you've never tried it. Let's go out and try it. And on me. Locked the wheels to her wheelchair, would not do it. I physically picked her up, and she loves it.
Right.
Now she goes every Saturday, but sometimes she gets so upset with me because I'm forcing her to do things that I think she'll like or that will be good for her. Tonight with the teen dance, she says she doesn't want to go. I think she might have fun.
Yeah.
But where do you draw the line of, am I forcing them to do something they don't want to do as to kind of tempting them into it?
Yeah. I'm a more pusher if I think it's a genuine area of weakness because, it's like someone saying to me, do you want to go to a restaurant where you have to order in Japanese? No. I don't speak Japanese. You're going to say no if you get that instant internal reaction of discomfort. So I don't know if she has an initiation problem or not, but let's say she does. You say to her, let's go put your initiation to the test, because that's what you're saying. Let's try this. Let's make you really uncomfortable and put your initiation to the test. If she doesn't say no, then you know you don't have that problem. So it may be time to sit down with her.
I say no a lot,
and then she's okay.
I never go anyway.
Right,
I
which
say,
is
let's
good.
Just try it. I say, if you absolutely hate it, we'll go home.
Right,
And
but then
once
she doesn't.
Gets into it, and then she decides that she likes it.
Yeah, that's kind of classic for an initiation problem. But
yeah, she's 15 too, so it's
yeah.
a teenager.
I would have an honest-to-heart chat with her over her favorite out-to-eat meal and say, sweetheart, when we were at the Spina Bifida conference, I had the most interesting conversation with this lady about how it is like some kids with spina bifida, their instant reaction to everything is no, because it makes them feel uncomfortable on the inside. And the types of things she would be experiencing are a little bit of a belly ache, a little bit of sweatiness, a little bit of shakiness, a little bit of those anxious panic symptoms, a little bit of headache, a little bit of feeling.
She does get anxiety and tears
Okay.
sometimes.
So you say to her, you say, so that's normal. It's normal if your initiation or you're getting going with stuff isn't tough. So the doctor said to me that that is how you're supposed to feel anytime I bring up something new. You're going to say no. You're going to say no. You're supposed to say no. And I'm supposed to say, I know it feels scary. I know you feel uncomfortable internally. We're going to try it together just like every other time. If it doesn't work after X amount of minutes, we're out of there.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it's more like the routine rather than you're, inflicting harm on her.
Right.
Because
It's just I feel like I'm forcing her all the time, and then she does wind up enjoying it. And even when I ask her later, see, you like it,
Yeah.
don't you? Then she's like, well, kind of.
well, that's as good as it gets with
She
15.
won't admit
Yeah.
that she likes it, but she's, but I know that she does.
Well, you're initiating for her. You're kind of working her through that by saying, oh, okay, I hear you don't want to do it, but you're not really giving me a reason. And I wouldn't debate it too much verbally, because that's the other problem that we have with kids is that we rely on their verbal, we let them kind of talk their way out of things a lot. And if they want to get out of something that there is no, like if it's like a roller skating party or a disco dance party or a dress up like the Jonas Brothers.
Camp yesterday. She
Yeah.
called me up at 2 o'clock and said, I have a headache, and I went down, and we left, and I said, did you really have a headache, or did you just not want to be there? And she said, well, it was a little headache. And, but we went back to the room for a while, and she's back there today and wanted to go back.
Well, it's one of the reasons that I think the camp program associated with the conference is so healthy and so rich, because in many ways they're practicing their executive function skills all day in a non-academic setting, and it's way more fun than an academic setting. And two, they're encountering a lot of other people who are having similar areas of discomfort.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. I've just decided as a parent myself that if you're not pretty much uncomfortable a lot of the time, you're not doing your job. So I don't know. There was another question. Yeah.
How do you get to the point where it's, like you were saying, help them? We're doing the initiating.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get to the point where they're going to do the initiating?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that's the goal. That's the goal right there. So the question is for the camera, which I've neglected the last 4 questions. How do you move from you as the parent or the other person doing the initiating to that person, to the other person doing the initiating? And all I have to say is it's a slow series of increasing builds. And what I mean by that is I'm just going to take baking muffins as an example. It's the first thing that comes to me. Doing tasks that are required to take care of yourself independently are really difficult when it comes to initiation, because you know what? Your bowel and bladder program, not so much fun. Cooking and cleaning, not that much fun. Doing laundry, not the top thing on most people's lists. So the initiation pause is even greater for tasks of less interest. I mean, we see it socially all the time. And if a 15-year-old girl is pausing to do something with a bunch of other 15-year-old girls and guys, you know what I mean? That's because that's what they want at 15. So, let's say I've decided that my kiddo needs to learn how to make some basic things in the kitchen. Okay, so the first thing is, saying to them, today's muffin day. You choose blueberry or peach. I don't like muffins. Great, I chose blueberry. So what you're doing is you're moving it forward no matter what. And then so there's so many things you have to do when you make muffins. And basically, you're giving out jobs at first. First, we always get the ingredients. Okay, number 1, you list it, but you make them get it. Okay, you give them the physical, active part of the job. Okay, you think of yourself more as the manager or the coach. Because most of the time what happens, especially if this is a parenting situation, is you end up doing it yourself out of sheer frustration and busyness. You end up being like, it's okay, I've got it. Or you do more. What you're looking for is physically doing less and less yourself and managing them physically doing more and more. So that means they are finding the flower. I bet they don't even know where the flower is. Half the kids, my own kids included, don't know where the flower is. Where's the flower? Go get the flower. This is what flour looks like. Feel it, touch it, smell it. Flours in bread. You'll find flour in most bread. What else do we have flour in? So we talk about flour. We get eggs, we get peaches, we get blueberries, whatever we've decided on. Physically moving around the kitchen, getting all of those things. Physically measuring, you know what I mean? I'm talking all of that. That's a lot of physical activity if you really break it down and think about it. Okay, so that's day 1. Day 2, waffles. Something related, but it doesn't have to be the same thing. Or it can be muffins if you're in a muffin jag. Okay, then, so you say, okay, what do you remember from yesterday? What do we do first? So you start prompting. If they don't get it, you still make them do as much physically, but you start prompting instead of giving all the information. Day 3, I know you know what we did the first day. Get going. And sometimes for kids who have really poor initiation, you have to physically give them a love pat to get them going. You know what I mean? When my kids are headed the wrong, I have younger kids, and so when they're always heading the wrong direction. I'm trying to go out this door, and they're running this way. You know what I mean? You just give them the little bump, move bump. You know what I mean? If your kid with an initiation problem, or your love interest, or your grandparent, whoever it is, says, I just don't feel like doing it right now, I'm going to do it later, you never go for that excuse. A lot of times you'll get the, I'm tired, I don't feel like it, I'm not in the mood. It doesn't matter. It doesn't, it's not like making muffins is that exhausting. But you're going to get a lot of that if you have an initiation problem. I don't feel like it, I'm not feeling good, my head hurts, my belly hurts. Okay, great, your head hurts. That's great. I'm going to give you half a Tylenol. We're going to work through it. The best thing is let's drink some water. Get some water while you're in there getting the eggs. You know what I mean? Keep it moving. Because if you are not good at initiation, you don't practice initiation. So it feels daunting even doing something like making muffins. As part of my dissertation, I did it with 5-year-old kids with spina bifida. And we did this thing with the animal crackers where I would put the animal crackers on the testing table. And I would say, if you happen to get hungry while we're doing the testing, feel free to take an animal cracker. I'd ask after about 20 minutes, are you hungry? 50% of them say yes. Well, help yourself to an animal cracker if you're hungry. 0 animal crackers after 32 subjects were eaten. That's amazing. You guys have seen 5-year-old kids. Normally you can't, you know what I mean, they're just, with the animal crackers. I bought 18 pounds of animal crackers, 0. So I think, the bottom line is that if you've asked for it and it's met with noncompliance, it needs more support. And you support it and let go of that support with the proof of them doing that. I think laundry is a great way to teach initiation as well. You got to find the laundry, and I would do everyone's laundry in the house because that involves not only finding everyone's laundry, sorting everyone's laundry, washing it, which is the easy part, as I always tell my husband. Putting it in the machine doesn't count as doing laundry. Getting it out of the machine into the dryer, that's another big one, because what happens to laundry after a day in the washer? Getting it out of the dryer, resorting it, refolding it, and with the icing on the cake, putting it back in the drawer. That is a great initiation practice. I think that as a society, we're so very busy that we underestimate the power of household chores. My kids would not agree with this because their chore lists are very long. But practicing what we do as adults and participating highly in the running of the household is the best way to learn to be independent. And I think as parents, it's very easy for us to make the snack for them and let them watch their favorite episode of Curious George. Or they're tired after school. It's very easy to let them have that hour of downtime, when in fact what that downtime is doing is perhaps recharging them. But I think we're not encouraging enough of the actual physical involvement in what has to happen to take care of ourselves on a daily basis. For all kids, when they leave the house, be it in high school or after high school, they are supposed to know how to do all the things that we are doing for them. That is a lot of stuff. So practice, 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 practice. All right. Oh, wait.
We've been working on my 14-and-a-half-year-old son to try to get him to be more independent. He's gone away to Boy Scout camp for a full week, and who knows if he did all his medical things. We just
He came home alive. Yeah.
hoped, yeah. But one thing he said he was interested in doing was his own medication, getting it into his container for the week, AM, PM,
Yeah.
and reordering.
Great.
Well, he was having a lot of issues, leaking through the stoma, accidents, whatever, and we kept thinking it was tethered cord. Come to find out, he hadn't taken medicine in 3 months. So we said we can't do that.
Yeah.
So we retracted that one.
Yeah.
So we tried, but he kept saying, "Oh, I'm taking it, I'm taking it."
Yeah.
So-
And this is okay, so in terms, so he said he wanted to do it.
Yep.
So you gave him the supplies.
Right.
And then what was your level of check-in in terms of, counting
We would
pills?
ask him,
You would
and he
ask
said,
him.
"Oh yeah, I took it
Okay.
morning and evening every night." We said, "Did you take your medicine?"
But you never counted pills.
We didn't. No,
Yeah.
We said, "Are you refilling them every week?" "Oh yeah, I'm taking care of it."
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I'm thinking, he wouldn't call him in.
Right,
And
like he's
then
on the
with
phone.
the symptoms, we thought, something's not right. So then, we checked and we read the bottle of the last refill.
Right.
And it had been December, and this was in March.
Yeah, you have brought up, this is a great example.
And that's when we said, "Oh, he's never living on his own."
Well, I don't know, because he wanted to do it, which is a
Yeah.
big step. A lot of kids don't even, they don't really rise even to that. But I think what probably happened is you ran into two classic issues with initiation. And one is the yes syndrome, which is no matter what you say, if the answer is supposed to be yes, you get a yes. If the answer is supposed to be no, you get a no. I've had kids who they know I know the truth, and parents will be like, "I cannot believe how much they lie." I don't think about it as lying. I think about it as an automated response. He knows he's supposed to take his medication. He's heard you ask him every day, 2 or 3 times a day, for as long as he can remember. And so the answer is supposed to be yes. So yes, I did take my medicine. But what I think probably happened is between his desire to do it and the actual doing it, something fell apart. So something fell apart in his ability to find the bottle, get the bottle open, remember if he had taken it or not. Most kids with medicine need a physical chart, or those boxes, like the Sunday through Monday boxes with AM and PM compartments, where you have to open it and the box has to be empty. Yeah. And not only do they have to have it, but and I will say this 20 more times today, you cannot rely on a verbal affirmative for kids who have an initiation or an executive function problem that it has happened, because they'll give you a yes because their intention is yes. It's not that they're being deceitful. It's because, yes, I know. Oh, yes, I am supposed to take my medication. Yes. Yes. It's a heartfelt, honest belief. And when you confront kids after 3 months, many of them will keep saying, "Well, I did." Or yes. They're befuddled by the situation at that point. And that's a genuine executive function problem right there. And so if he still has the desire to do it and you think you can stomach another trial, I would go back and I would do, he's a teenager. So I would do something like, you know what, let's do a training video for other 14-year-old kids about how to make sure we take our medication. So we're going to videotape you. We're going to tape you in the morning. What's your morning time? Oh, that's right. Let's write it down, 9 o'clock. So at 9 o'clock, let's set your alarm. The alarm's going to go off. We're going to get together at that point. I'm going to start taping you, and you're going to show me how at 9 o'clock you take that medication. Now, if he still doesn't do it, you open that thing, you put his hand in there, you have him put the pill in his mouth, you swallow it, you have him open that mouth, you check that mouth to make sure it's gone, but you go to that level of intensity, and when he is done with that, you give him the greatest high five in the world, and you do that, and then one day you say, I can't videotape you today, run the routine, but you spy on him. You know what I mean? You just back it off slowly. But it's one of the biggest dilemmas with kids is we cannot rely on them saying that they have done it or they want to do it or they will do it. Because if you don't have physical proof that it's happened, you cannot count on it with an executive function problem. And I know that's frustrating, but it's nothing about his intent, and it's nothing about his desire. It's about something that fell through in between A and Z that just needs a little bit more beefing up, because I think it could happen if he wants it to. Okay. All right, so we'll move to attention a little bit. So, or actually, you know what? You guys pretty much finished off the list for me, but with initiation, so avoidance of the peer activities, a lack of common sense, you'll see this a lot. You kind of feel like they could get lost on their own street corner. Anxiety and depression are common, and a lot of times when you have an initiation problem, people get diagnosed with depression all of the time because of their lack of movement, their lack of getting going with things. And they can both obviously co-occur. Initiation as an executive function is a brain-based weakness. Depression can follow, especially for adults, who crave that interaction, be it social or in another level, and aren't getting it. And anxiety, I think low-grade anxiety symptoms are very, very common because you're uncomfortable, again, when you're pushed on anything that's not well developed for you. Social isolation, and then we do know that for teenagers and adults, there is a higher than normal incidence of suicide attempt. So behavior symptoms associated with poor attention, a lot of interrupting conversation, kind of this cluelessness about when to interject, a lack of follow-through with directions and tasks, inconsistent school performance, things like you saw the homework, they know how to do that, and then the test comes home and you're like, careless mistakes with schoolwork. I'm talking about not putting your name on things, not noticing something like a lot of math pages will have like 3 sections, and for a simpler example, like a plus section, a minus section, and then a word problem section. And what you'll see is that whatever idea they got into in the beginning, they carried all the way through. So you'll see all the subtraction problems done like plus problems, even though they just didn't attend to that sign. Excessive talking, difficulty staying in seat, fidgeting, squirming, forgetful, daydreaming, not wanting to listen, doesn't seem to want to listen, blurts out answers, loses things, jumping from activity to activity, easy distractibility, failing to give close attention, overactivity, physical intrusiveness, difficult turn-taking, and difficulty doing more than one thing at a time. And how that looks from an adult standpoint, if you're talking about little kids, is that you cannot give more than one concrete direction at a time and expect it to be met with compliance. So, any questions about those? We got a couple back there.
The list you read could apply to my 13-year-old son who doesn't have spina bifida. I was just laughing about that. It just seems that this could really apply to a lot of early teenagers.
Well, the early teenage brain is a totally different lecture. And the short answer on that one is that when you have a teenage brain, your executive function system goes through this level of unparalleled growth and richness. And what happens is you tend to get this overness on all of your executive functions. You know how they classically say, oh, teenagers, they think nothing bad can happen to them. They overestimate their abilities. They can drive at night after 3 beers. It's because their executive function system is getting so much energy and attention that it tends to bump them in this kind of area. So they tend to exhibit kind of these hyperactive, poorly thought through, impulsive, grandiose ideas. But it's because that system is really in the works at that point. And with boys, we see it for longer and we see it later. Girls tend to hit it shorter and earlier. If you have an attention deficit or an attentional issue as well, of course it exacerbates that problem. As my father said when I was in graduate school, my father's a voracious reader. He's a PhD in chemistry, and he's a history major, and blah, blah, blah. He was just lightly reading through one of my textbooks by a man named Russell Barkley, who's kind of a guru in the attentional field. And he said, Margaret, I finished your book, I'm thinking, oh yeah, in 4 hours. Okay, you finished the book. He said, and I think I have an attention deficit disorder. I said, Dad, I said, at any given day, any given moment in time, everyone feels this way. It is normal to feel frayed and irritable and distractible in that way. But an attention deficit, just like an initiation problem, is pervasive across settings, and it impedes your ability to meet the demands of your daily life. And as I explain to people, people with an attention deficit, it's not that you do not pay attention, and that's commonly misunderstood. You know, in the spectrum of attention, the vast majority of people are able to, like, I'm able to speak to you, but if someone was calling my name over here, I would be able to hear that, probably stop what I'm doing, respond to that, but come back and regain control over the lecture. If you have an attention struggle or an attention weakness, you don't spend very much time in this even-keel, divided attention spot. You spend way more time distracted and not paying attention to anything real well, or more time being overly absorbed in something, so overly absorbed that your parents literally have to shake you and pick you up to get your attention diverted back to them. And so you'll classically hear people say, when he's playing video games, he could play it for 4 hours. His attention is perfect when he's building his Legos. So it's not that, and all of us do that. All of us spend some time over here, and all of us spend some time over here. But if your attention is well developed, you spend more time in this kind of even state where two things can happen at once. But if you struggle with attention, your time here is more limited. So you're either here more or here more, which is the struggle, because the world needs you to be here. Does that make sense? Kind of. It's a really difficult construct, attention. Yes, back in the pink.
My daughter is 7, where she was in first grade this year. She is now doing a second year of first grade. They are talking, we were in an IEP, and they decided that she's not special ed because they think that she has more issues other than, well, she does have spina bifida, but she's fine, I guess they said. So, but she doesn't do any of the, like, you can't tell her to read, and they said she has rescue syndrome. Like, she kind of just sits and waits for you to say, all right, Gabrielle, come on, let's go. So that's their analysis of her. I'm just wondering how to, I guess, maybe educate them more on, like, this isn't necessarily a choice. This is what we need to work on with her, not just penalize her for being the way she is.
Yeah, and I agree completely, obviously. There's handouts on the back table. Take one of those. And, I think I recommend that all school-age and college school-aged individuals, be you an adult or an 18 to 22-year-old, have an active, open 504 plan or an IEP, which you're eligible for both based on the medical diagnosis of spina bifida, because the research has, and that's federal law. So if you start getting flack on that, which 8 out of 10 people do, I work in Kentucky, we hear this all the time. By law, by federal law, any medical condition that's known to impact the development of the brain is eligible for services. Okay, so that's one piece of it, is just clarifying that. But then, 99% of people in the school district don't know anything about spina bifida. So there's a difference between demanding that they recognize it. You can get it on the paper, but then doing the appropriate thing for it is a totally different thing. But I do think it's important that it is specified within the paperwork, because it's the truth, and it's the only avenue that I know of, besides having a super nice, accommodating teacher, to make that happen consistently. Now, as far as making sure the teacher or the aide or whoever it is understands what they're supposed to do, that's a whole different dilemma. The people who I've seen with the greatest success with that are people who require 3 at a minimum meetings a year with the teacher, and they provide them with the most concrete literature they can find off the internet that says, look, this is what it looks like. There's a very good chance this is going on with her, because we know it is so common with the diagnosis of spina bifida, regardless of the type, regardless of the shunt, regardless of all those other things. And saying, you know, I know it's hard to believe. I didn't, you know, for all of us, it's hard to believe. But if she's not getting going with something, bets are that it's a problem with initiation. And I will have my fingers crossed that you will have some lovely brainstorm on that educator's part, and they will say, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you brought something in. That's my hope.
With each new teacher, I make copies of everything I can find that's relevant about spina bifida in the learning educational field, and I print that off, or I even have just a basic good book on what spina bifida is, because I found out, he's 9 in 3rd grade, most of these teachers don't have a clue what it is, what it involves, how it affects verbal, nonverbal learning, any of the things that pertain to his ability to learn. So it just ends up falling, I think, on the parent to be the strongest advocate for this child and educate these people, whether it's even his PE teacher. I mean, they just don't have a clue what these kids are capable of doing or not doing. And then you have to follow up with it, because you can't just lay it in their lap and then not check back. And that's where you go back, like you said, to your parent-teacher conferences, and you have to say, okay, you know, she'll say to me, you know, Charlie didn't do this, so I wouldn't let him have PE, and I wouldn't let him have recess. Well, that was the worst thing she could have done for him.
Yeah.
Because she, you know, he couldn't focus to do it. He has initiation and attention deficits, which go along with his diagnosis, but she didn't understand that connection. Her first response was to pull away things he enjoyed. And so after I showed her some of these things, like you printed out, I mean, it was like you clicked the light switch. She just didn't understand it till then. And it was very helpful. And it does, of course, help to have a cooperative teacher who's really into that. And it's tough with inclusion now, because they've got 20 kids. And mine's the spina bifida, and this one's ADD, and this one's Asperger's. And, you know, it's tough on these teachers, too. So it takes a real cooperation in both parts.
I think you're absolutely right on. And I don't know any other way to make it happen right now. I haven't seen it work any other way but the way you have just described. And, you know, unfortunately, that's a lot of work. And some people have more resource and more support for that than others do. And I really wish that wasn't the case, but that's where we are right now, in my opinion, as well.
I think it's a challenge for us, because spina bifida is so much seen as a physical thing and not the cognitive thing. So there's so much awareness of the ADHD or autism or some other type of learning disability. But when they look at our kids, they think, how are they going to get around the classroom? Are they going to be able to ambulate? You know, no, that's not the biggest concern. So I think that's the challenge we have.
Yeah, I agree. And I need my computer guy, because I lost my presentation. Ooh.
Okay, so while you're waiting, so
he's coming back.
We provide all this information to the teacher, but can you give a specific example of an attention-related IEP goal that's measurable and that would work?
We can flip through my handout.
Oh, okay.
No, that's okay. There's some specific ones in there, but I'll be honest. I think, you know, obviously I cannot write these for an individual child in a presentation setting, but I do believe that's what it takes, because most of you have seen an IEP, and for those of you who haven't, they're more general goals than are truly helpful much of the time. Things such as Charlie will complete his homework independently 80% of the time. I don't even know what that means, really. You know, or if initiation is the weakness, Charlie will initiate activity with the goal. That's, to me, that I understand that's what they want. So in terms of goal, that is a goal. But if you're going to teach something, the most powerful teaching strategies are nonverbal strategies. Sorry, I don't know what happened. So, like when I meet with, and sometimes I go to these meetings because, sometimes I go to these meetings because there's a complete breakdown. I ask teachers to give me the same list that parents do. Tell me the top 5 things that your worried about that are not happening in this room, and 5 that are annoying you. Because let's be honest, that's a big part of what's going on, is that poorly developed attention and initiation are annoying. Okay, and that's an important thing to keep in mind, because kind of acknowledging that they're just annoying. People don't mean that to be annoying, but it can be annoying, because we say to them, "Did you take your medicine?" And they say, "Yes," and it's annoying when you find out it didn't happen. So saying to them, part of the reason we wanted to have this discussion is, we share your frustrations with this, and here's some really specific, concrete things we're doing at home. And we've talked to the doctors. The doctors talked with us about providing physical prompts, doing physical, hands-on. I use the term in some of the things I write, Montessori-style approach. And a Montessori-style approach is, you don't tell a kid to do it, you do it with them. You do it with them with their hands, with their feet, with their head. You teach them how to do something by physically doing it with them. You don't tell them how to do it, you do it with them. You want to learn how to sled? We're sledding for 4 hours. You want to learn how to make muffins? We're getting covered in flour and we're making muffins. You want to learn how to call up your prom date? This is one of my best stories ever, is that I had this kiddo, a 16-year-old, he wanted to invite this girl to the prom. So we practiced. I'd go in the next office and he would call me on the phone. He would say, "Do you want to go to the prom?" We practiced, what if she says, "Oh, I don't know, I'll have to call you back." So I send him home after like 6 weeks of practice. He's going to call her that night. He comes back the next session, and I say, "Luke, how did it go?" And he said, "Horrible." And I was like, "Oh my God, what happened?" And he said, "Well, I called, I went through the whole thing." And I'm like, "Well, what did she say?" And she said, "Yes." And I hung up the phone. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was the one thing we hadn't practiced, was the successful response. And so I was like, you got to practice everything. Practice everything. Luckily, she really liked him, so she was able to call him back after the next session, and it was still cool. So, oh, okay.
These attention issues, are they, well, let me back up. When our son completed first grade, like 2 days before the end of the school year, the teacher called me and she said, well, I wanted to just let you know that Eric really has a hard time staying on task and keeping focused. And she rambles off all these things that she never bothered to tell me all year.
Yeah.
And she said, I just thought you might want to know those before next year. So I read between the lines that she wanted me to take him to the doctor and get some medicine and get him fixed up so that next year, he would do better. And the kind of attention issues that our children with spina bifida have, are they treatable with ADD medications? Or is it something different, the way their brains function, that the medicines aren't effective? We did try some medicines, turned our son into a zombie. And we didn't want a zombie. We wanted our bright, happy-go-lucky kid, but we still have attention issues. So
right.
Can you talk about the medicines or that?
Yeah, I can talk about it a little bit. I'm not an MD, I'm a PhD, so I kind of defer a little bit. But your question is excellent. It is not the same thing. Attentional weaknesses, because you have the diagnosis of spina bifida, is not the same diagnosis as attention deficit disorder, be it attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or attention deficit disorder. We kind of call everything ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Now, many children, like if you come into my office, I would diagnose you with cognitive disorder, because that diagnosis says that you have a brain-based medical issue that affects other parts of your brain, like your ability to pay attention. But many psychologists don't know anything about spina bifida either. So the chance that you would get an ADHD diagnosis is very, very high. But it does not respond to medication the same way as a tried and true ADHD, And in the studies I've seen, and there's been a lot of them under varying control, it's been about 50%. Now, they have not, of course, tried every single attentional medication, because there's a bunch of them out there now, but that's with the Ritalin group primarily. And so I encourage people, if they want to give that a shot, to do so, but even if you look at the long-term studies on remediating for attentional weaknesses, environmental modifications, training, are by far the strongest skill builder in the long term. The medicine certainly alleviates, if it works for you, the initial annoying symptoms, but taking medication doesn't teach you other strategies, which is what we're really after. Does that make sense? Yeah.
And then they said that he doesn't stay focused long enough to learn, so that's why he has memory. His short-term memory problems because he doesn't focus long enough to take it into his brain and hold it there to remember it.
Yeah, and that's a little suspicious to me. It's pretty hard to have a true memory problem. You know what I mean? Like a real hardcore memory problem. That's not a common thing. But if you aren't paying attention or you're not learning for whatever reason, there could be a variety of reasons he's not learning. Maybe she's not a good teacher. Maybe whatever that topic wasn't at his level. Maybe he was hungry. You know, there's a lot of reasons to not, because when people say you have a memory issue, that means that a lot of other things have happened and then your brain doesn't hold it in there. Well, I first have to know if the information even got in. You know, has it been encoded is the big term. Has it been put in there? Now, I test kids for memory all the time. I don't see very many that have a true memory problem. They've got some other thing that's fallen out, and so it never even got in there. So if you're going to test for it, well, you know, you got to get it in there, first of all. So it might be time for a good neuropsychological evaluation or something. And the reason for evaluation is evaluation makes a lot of people very uncomfortable. It makes me uncomfortable. I don't like going to the doctor either. But if I want to know what's going on with someone, then that's the best way to figure it out. And I get really uncomfortable with the mislabeling of things. You know, like the teacher saying, she was implying he had an attention problem, and now she's implying that he has a memory. And she doesn't know that. All she knows is that he's not producing whatever it is he's not producing. And she sounds annoyed. I don't know if she is or not, but right. Okay, so you know, it would be, and this is a little bit of a deviation, but a school-based IEP assessment is not the same thing. And you guys, I don't know if this lecture's gone on today, but a school-based assessment is not a neuropsychological assessment. A school-based assessment gives you your basic IQ and your basic achievement. So what your supposed capacity would be measured against what you're actually able to do, meaning like your pluses and your minuses and your reading and your comprehension. And if there's a difference between those two things, they talk about learning disabilities. A neuropsych assessment or a neuropsychological assessment tests executive functions, these other things that are not algebra and geometry. And that's why we really encourage that for anyone with a medical diagnosis that affects the functioning of the brain, because otherwise 9 out of 10 times an IEP school-based assessment comes back and the IQ is average. That's fine. You have average capacity. But if you can't get going with something, you wouldn't know that. It's a totally separate thing. Executive functions are not the same thing as your intelligence. You can be plenty bright but not get going. Plenty bright but not be able to focus your attention. They're two separate things, and we don't test for these executive functions in a school-based assessment. And this is, you know, I work with kids who have a lot of things going on. I recommend that standardly for kids who have had any type of acquired or traumatic brain injury, cerebral palsy, muscular diseases. I mean, there's just a variety of medical conditions that we know impact your executive functions.
First, a comment. What works for my son, but it took him until the end of second grade to realize, is when the teacher is teaching, he can't sit on the side of the circle even though his wheelchair or braces make it more convenient. He physically has to be put where he'll be in direct eye with the teacher so that something out the window or something a kid's doing across the way will not distract, that he will have the best way of learning. So it got put into his IEP based off of a teacher's recommendation when she noticed it. But my question is, my child will calf. He'll go into the bathroom and most of the time is fine when he's told to go calf. But sometimes he goes in the bathroom and haven't seen him for 10 minutes. And I go and I find him on the toilet and I'm like, dude, we got to go. And he goes, okay. And he goes to get off the toilet. I'm like, wait a minute. You have not calved. Well, yes, I have. I've been in here for 10 minutes on the toilet. Like, I can see an empty garbage can. There's no calf. You didn't calve. Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
How do you work with that? Because obviously we're going towards independence, that he has now been taught due to privacy he needs to close that door and have private time to calve. But yet it's not always
What's your
reliable.
ratio?
I mean, I think he's doing okay, that it's about probably 80% of the time.
Pretty good.
But most of the time, it might even be more if I was not in a hurry to go places, where I would check on him more frequently.
I would go back to a door open policy and put them under some time parameters. Do you have like a timer, that you use that's not on the stove?
He uses the timer to know when it's time to calf on his watch.
Right. Well, there's no way if he's good at it, it takes 10 minutes.
No, it takes 2-3 minutes to calf.
Right.
It's just that he's not.
He's in there just getting comfy and got distracted.
He got distracted, sat down on the toilet, and then noticed a bug on the wall, and
then he's like, oh, I've been in here a while. I must be done.
I must be done. And he comes on out, and I'm like, wait a minute, no calf.
Yeah. Well, and for teenagers, again, I think the most important thing is an honest, hardcore discussion about it. Honey, you've been doing great with the calving. I think about 8 out of 10 times. Slam dunk, all done, supplies in the wastebasket. But there are some times, as you know, tend to forget what's going on.
Now, in the BAL program, it's much less. He gets on the toilet, calves, and only about 60% of the time. He's got his water, the water's hung up. He started doing his homework, and I walk in there and I go, never started your water. Oh, crap, I didn't do that. I'm like, yeah, really, get started.
Yeah, I don't think he's ready to be in the bathroom by himself, with the door shut. Yeah. I mean, and you'll hear this from me again today. If you're not getting 99% compliance, you need to be in there more, even with a teenager. Because here's the thing. Okay, yeah. Sorry, I thought you said 14. So 8, those are really good numbers. But what you've got to remember is that we kind of, we tend to give a lot of freedom without realizing we're giving it. And really our job a lot of the time is to make sure they're able to do what we need them to do, and then they can have all the freedom they want with it. But until you've got really super high, and I'm talking like 99%, because 80% it's good. It's really good for an 8-year-old. But you could see that number slip, because that 20% is a strong 20. It can really bleed into an 80. So I would be like, you know what, we were at the conference, we're going to change a few things around the house. And to keep his pace moving with it, because the other thing that happens is that if you have any of these executive function things going on, the longer you spend with an activity, the worse it falls apart. We're talking about fast and efficient. And kids with spina bifida are not typically characterized as fast. You know what I mean? Like, you don't hear stories about how, he could calf. They have calving competitions, in the bathroom. And you talk to other 8-year-old boys, I'm not kidding, at any big family picnic, they're having some peeing contests to see who can pee the farthest off some balcony or some bridge. There's a lot about speed and quickness, but you don't hear that in this population, and it's because of and so think to yourself, what is really as long as this should take? Really, and you coach him to that time and to the maximal amount of perfection you can get on it. So, and you also got to cut down distractions. No magazines in there. None of that stuff we used when we were potty training. Got to get it all out.
At what age do you recommend the first neuropsych evaluation?
Well, I like them to have them when they're going into kindergarten. Now, we can't do, many of the neuropsych measures don't go below 7 years old, but there is kind of a set of baby neuropsych things and a couple tools I think that are really good for picking up emerging executive function weaknesses. Because the thing about executive functions is when you're 3, you don't need to have very many of them. When you're 5, you got to have a few more. 5 is really the age of emerging executive functions. We expect 5-year-olds to have some decent attention, to be able to be somewhat organized. If we say, Sally, put on your shoes, we expect some of that to go. But by the time you're 7, 8, 9, guess what? You're supposed to have the foundation of all these executive functions laid in there. And that's where people start getting the most complaints, is really this 1st through 4th grade period, where they go from getting all this feedback about how sweet and kind and lovable their child was to, you know, he's not putting in much effort, he seems really disinterested, kind of lazy, irritable, not getting going with stuff. And you're like, wait a minute, we just went from having really sweet to, you know, irritable and unmotivated? What happened? Well, what happened is those executive functions weren't required at 3 and 4, and now they're required at 8. And so if they're not there, it shows up pretty loudly.
Florida, and they're highly expensive. I mean, the one that we looked into, she wanted $2,500.
Well, to get your best deal, I think I always go to a university-based setting, because as someone who's primarily worked in university settings take any insurance. You know, the university, I don't know Florida well, but I'm going to assume that the University of South Florida or Northern Florida is going to, and you're looking for a Department of Pediatrics, and you're looking for a Child Development Center, and you're looking for a place that does diagnostic evaluations of children. And my bet is either that or a solid children's hospital. I don't know. I know Miami has a great children's hospital. They're going to have departments of...
AI DuPont Hospital has a branch down in Florida,
Yeah.
Children's Hospital, so that might be a place to go.
I had a friend do a lot of neuropsych training down in South Florida at the Children's Hospital there in Miami. But, you know, you're looking for a children's hospital or a dedicated pediatric university-based.
What is your feeling on these new programs coming out, like the Learning RX and for cognitive evaluation?
I don't know yet. You know, there's always something. You know what I mean? There's the vision therapy, or there's the sensory integration treatment for executive functions. And I haven't seen anything that's knocked my socks off yet. But I'll be honest, I haven't looked at everything either. I can't keep up with the volume. Anything that's computer-based, I'm nervous about with this population, because I feel like it fuels that lack of interaction. And social interaction is our number one determinant in our personal satisfaction and happiness. And people with spina bifida, children with spina bifida, because of the executive function weaknesses, they don't have as rich of a social interaction network as many other adults do, but they crave it as much. And so if you spend too much time, in my opinion, on the computer, on these social networking sites, or using computer-based therapies, I feel like while you may be helping one end, you're harming another. So that's why I'm all for camp, like we've got here, things that are actually doing and practicing. And, you know, laundry at home needs to be done because guess what? I need to wear that shirt tomorrow. You know, there's real motivation and consequences to those sorts of things.
Is there a textbook that we can find that will help us to learn how to teach these things that you're talking about here, what to do at home and at school, and attention and behavior symptoms associated with poor attention? Because I think you must have interviewed our son when you made out this list of things. And,
I did. I talked to him. He thinks you guys are great.
So, and we struggle with this, and trying, and during the summer when he's not in school, every day we have a simulated school session, and to get through some of the simplest concepts, it's a repetitive process that's just over and over and over again. And is there another door that we can open? Where's the key to this thing?
Yeah. I don't have an easy answer for that. Everything in here is from a book that I co-authored called Brain Stars is the title of the book. Brain Stars. It's 2 words, but we combined it to be all tricky and cute for the title. Now, Brain Stars was written off a U.S. Department of Education grant. It was written for children who had executive function weaknesses because of injury to the brain. So I don't want you to, be concerned when you see that. But the strategies we use for both groups, the strategies work equally well. Yeah. Now, but I always say that because people I've upset a couple of people by saying, well, my child doesn't have a brain injury. I know that. But if you have an executive function weakness, these strategies appear to work across diagnosis. And so we're going to do another book, and I'm voting, of course, for the spina bifida population. So we'll see if we can get that through. But I have had the most luck with, if the attention list is the one that's ringing your bell, Russell Barkley, who is the big, long-standing guru in attention, has a couple teacher-parent workbooks. You can Google him. He's on Amazon. The Brain Stars is not on Amazon because it's in revision, but it's published by a company called Lash, L-A-S-H, and Associates. I like a lot of Dr. Barkley's stuff. There's also an author, he passed away recently, his name's Mark Ilvasaker, and it's Y-L-V-I-S-A-K-E-R. He is a speech and language doctorate by training. He did a lot of work with executive function and crossover to speech and language abilities and this is important because, as you've probably noticed in your own home, you end up talking a lot about what needs to be done without it really happening, which is incredibly annoying. So he did a lot of work about avoiding speech and language pitfalls. So there's also some really nice literature out by the Spina Bifida Association of Colorado. They've put out some really nice parent-teacher handouts with some practical activities. You'll see my name on that. I was in Denver before I came to Louisville at the Children's Hospital. So they've got some nice research going on out there. All right, so as often goes in these presentations, I've kind of gotten ahead of myself, but I want everyone to remember that if you have these areas of weakness, it isn't a choice. It isn't a choice not to have good attention. It isn't a choice to have poor initiation. It isn't a choice to have brown eyes. These are things that are biologically based, and they manifest themselves across settings in our everyday behavior. Okay, so someone had asked what we can do. Environmental modifications, and this is not an exhaustive list, but doing things to modify your environment and to just tweak things in a really small way. People always say to me, I developed this 8-page planner with red pages and green pages and highlighted pages, and in my experience, the things that are the simplest work the best. Like on this list, number 2, with younger children, use simple games like Simon Says and red light, green light. You would not believe how good of an intervention this is. It's red light, green light. I'm not kidding you. If you have an initiation problem, you don't get going. But guess what gets you over that initiation bump? If you're excited and everyone else is doing it with you at the same time. Even if you can't get started, someone gives you a little push, red light, green light. You remember how exciting it was to play red light, green light? It's a great game that helps that loop get overcome. Simon Says, same thing. It's really fun. Duck, Duck, Goose is another good one because you're waiting, and then I get picked, and I run, and I have to sit down. These are simple games that practice the physical act of doing something. Now, obviously, if you're 25, you probably don't want to be having a cocktail party with the whole, Simon Says thing going on. But if you're serving alcohol, you might. I don't know. That might work out okay. But what you're looking for are activities that do something physical. So a lot of times parents will say to me, well, I really want to get them involved in something, and I'll say, get them involved in something physical. I don't care what they can or cannot do for themselves. You find a children's hospital, you find something, Jill Farmer was here yesterday, and I saw she's the director of rec therapy and services at Fraser Rehab in Louisville, Kentucky. She has a huge rec program. They ride horses. They float ducks in ponds. They throw javelins. They do everything there because physical activity is a strong teacher of brain-based skills. Someone telling you what to do does not make your brain develop that ability. Your mom can tell you 700 times to tie your shoes. If you have a brain-based disability in initiation, it doesn't matter. You've just wasted all of that language. You've wasted it. And people get really frustrated by this, but it doesn't mean that it can't happen. It means that you've got to do it from a different direction. Kids can learn to tie their shoes if they've got the fine motor strength to do that in coordination. So you teach them how to do it by tying everyone's shoes you can get your hands on. And you don't buy them Velcro shoes anymore. You wake them up 5 minutes earlier so that you can spend the time to do that. And I tell people, whatever you're trying to tackle, only do one thing at a time and make it a small thing. So if, the shoes or the homework or getting the homework in the backpack or brushing the hair or doing the calving, whatever it is, do that one thing until it's happening 99% of the time, and then do something else, because otherwise it gets really watered down and you don't have time and energy for it. None of us do. That's true for all of us. All right, do not give directions for future activities. That's an important one. Do not tell them what you need them to do in 2 hours, because guess what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You want to, and for all of us, I said this to my own kids today. If I'm speaking, if you hear mommy's voice, that means you're supposed to be cluing in, mom's speaking, looking, this is important. And half of the reason they ignore us is because half of what we say, either we don't respond to ourselves or it isn't important. So it's all about what you're going to say, making it worth, and women I'm famous for this, women are classically more guilty of this. Sweetheart, it's time for the soccer game. It's going to be so much fun. Sam's going to be there. We need your shoes. What else? Where's your dad? What do you want him to do? Get shoes now. Now. Shoes. Walk him over to the shoe basket. And that's what you want to pare it down to. And it's especially hard for, myself, And physical prompts, really, I am always touching, moving, guiding, hand over handing. You got to do that kind of stuff. And at school, here's some school ones. This say-do routine, and this is a good one. The pill exercise. This is a good one for this. They tell you what they're going to do all the time, but then they don't do it. It doesn't count unless they're together. I'm saying I'm doing it, and I'm doing it. I say I'm going to go calf myself, and I'm done in 90 seconds because that's all you know what I mean? Say do. There's none of this do it later. Do it later does not exist in a training world. You got to think about being an Olympic coach. If you're Michael Phelps' coach, and Michael Phelps says, I'm going to do my laps later. No, he doesn't do his laps later because he's skill building. He's trying to get to the next level. Then when you're skill building, it isn't something you practice once a day. Initiation is something you can practice all the time. You're always getting going with something. And it's something you need to practice. Whatever you practiced it with yesterday, be it laundry. If laundry's going to be your thing, be on that laundry. Make laundry your thing. And there's so many things to practice with initiation. Recycling, trash, cooking, toys, cleaning up, putting in movies, ordering pizza for teenagers, ordering food on the phone and navigating the phone for many teenagers with initiation difficulties is nearly impossible. They don't know how to handle that give and take over the phone. Tonight's pizza night, guess what? You're ordering the pizza or we're not eating. So here we go. Let's get on it, go through the menu. There's so many ways every day to do it. And then I really am one for facilitating social interactions with peers that you trust, that are supervised appropriately, really getting out there and kind of pushing a little bit. Okay, so for attention, you've got to have them with you before you give a direction or show a direction. This is not with you. This is not with you. You're with me. I can touch you and I can see your eyeballs looking at me is with me. Short directions, shoes now. Do not give multiple options and choices on everything, especially for littler kids. I mean, teenagers are a different thing. But you know what? We don't need to have 3 or 4 options on every single thing. Try not to become irritated, and then eliminate distractions to the highest degree possible. All right, and then at school, and you guys have all this written down, so I don't need to read you through it, but seating is very important, as someone brought up. And then you had brought up the one about restriction from physical activity or recess is never an effective means of behavior modification. And as a general rule, the whole removal of things that we like, the whole consequences-based approach assumes the capacity to change behavior based on a noxious event, meaning I don't do what I'm supposed to do, someone takes away my car, and that's so horrible for me that the next time I act differently. Well, you have to be able to initiate and have good attention for that to be true. So in general, that type of behavior modification program is completely ineffective within this population because you're not going to develop initiation because someone took away your Wii. Does that make sense? You can't develop it if it's not there. You can't punish that. You can't punish a weakness. Yes?
My daughter who has spina bifida is 10, and my other daughters are 13 and almost 15. And they always say that like Kellyanne never gets in trouble, or you're always, they notice that she's more dependent upon me.
Yeah.
And then I'm always telling her and helping her and that kind of thing. How do you deal effectively? Do you come out and say she has initiation issues and attention issues?
I do.
Just sit him down and...
Yeah, because to me
I think they understand her physical needs, and that I need to catheter, and then, with the help her put her braces on and things. But they get very frustrated with,
Well, because the rules aren't the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially with kids who you're able to have this type of discussion with, because I don't see it as a good or bad thing. I see it as, I wear a size 9 shoe. So I need a size 9. You can't give me a size 7. If I have one kiddo of my own she's academic. You know what I mean? She's on it. The other one, and we talk about it. His thing is not this. Your thing is not this. Your rules are not the same. I love you both the same, but guess what? This is harder for her. As a family, yeah, that's cool. Guess what? This is harder for you. We work with that as a team. Because it's going to be obvious to them. And I'm sure in many ways you felt like, your daughter's got to deal with enough. You don't want to make it worse for her. But I think you can handle that discussion in a very just honest, forthright way. There's something hard for all of us. And for most of us,
I think it's gotten worse. They've brought it up for me more lately because she's gotten older. Like before they understood that because she was younger.
Well, they don't realize what's going on either, though. You know what I mean? They look at her, and they don't understand that. You know what I mean? They don't understand it like the teachers don't understand it. But I need all 3 of your daughters to understand it. You know what I mean? In their own way. They're all different ages. They're not going to understand it the same way. And that's a good discussion to have. Because it isn't bad or good, it just is. We're all built a little differently. Yeah. Okay. So you guys I've bumped up against the end of my time, but you can read through the rest of the recommendations for school. The attentional ones are very much Dr. Barkley-esque. And at the end of the day, I certainly appreciate everyone's good attention and initiation. And I hope you guys have a fabulous time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for attending this session. Because meeting your needs is important to us, we need your feedback on this presentation. Please take a few moments to complete our evaluation, which can be located by clicking on the Clicking Here hyperlink on your screen. It will only take a few clicks of your mouse to provide us information to make the SBU experience better for you and others. If you have any questions relating to SBU, please contact us at sbu@sbaa.org.